On the evening of February 19, 1994, the trauma ward at Riverside General Hospital was operating under its usual high-stakes rhythm. That baseline of controlled chaos shifted when paramedics brought in 31-year-old Gloria Ramirez. She was suffering from a rapidly bottoming blood pressure, frenetic pulse, and cardiac arrhythmias, all complications stemming from advanced cervical cancer. The medical team immediately initiated their standard protocols. They administered sedatives like diazepam, pumped pure oxygen into her lungs, and when she began to go into shock, they prepared to defibrillate her heart. As the staff removed her shirt to apply the defibrillator pads, they noticed a strange, oily sheen covering her skin. At the same time, a distinct foul odor, resembling a mix of garlic and fruit, began emanating from her mouth. The medical emergency was no longer operating within the known bounds of cardiovascular care. A biological anomaly had entered the trauma ward, unnoticed until it was too late. The situation escalated when registered nurse Susan Kane drew a routine sample of blood. The vial emitted a sharp, overwhelming scent of ammonia, and when Kane swirled the tube, she saw manila-colored, straw-like crystals floating inside. Seconds after identifying the ammonia smell, Kane reported a sudden burning sensation on her face. Before anyone could react, she collapsed to the floor. An invisible agent was spreading through the room. Medical resident Julie Gorchinsky grew lightheaded, stepped away, and fainted, soon lapsing into convulsions and apnea. Moments later, respiratory therapist Maureen Welch also collapsed, unable to control the movement of her limbs. Recognizing an immediate threat, the hospital declared an internal hazmat disaster. The entire emergency room was ordered to evacuate, forcing staff to move dozens of patients out into the parking lot, while a skeleton crew stayed behind. 45 minutes after her arrival, Gloria Ramirez was pronounced dead. The vacuum left behind was terrifying. An invisible agent had neutralized an entire trauma ward, killed a patient, and triggered a desperate forensic hunt for a killer that left no obvious physical trace. The investigation into Ramirez's death required extreme precautions. Pathologists performed the autopsy wearing positive pressure biocontainment suits, isolating her body in an airtight aluminum casket to prevent any further airborne exposure. Despite these measures, the coroner's toxicology report yielded a shocking anticlimax. The analysis found absolutely zero traditional poisons, toxins, or illicit drugs in her system. 23 hospital staff members were suffering from toxic exposure, 5 of them requiring hospitalization. Yet the patient at the center of the incident showed no detectable toxins in her system. Standard toxicology could not explain the collapse of the medical team. The investigation moved beyond hospital medicine into the domain of theoretical chemistry. The Riverside coroner's office handed the impossible variables of this cold case over to the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, an independent research facility. The lab's first deduction hypothesized that Ramirez had been using a topical pain remedy called dimethyl sulfoxide, or DMSO. This would cleanly account for both the greasy sheen on her skin and the distinct garlic taste and odor. When paramedics administered pure oxygen in the ambulance, it likely caused an oxidation reaction. The harmless DMSO absorbed an oxygen atom, transforming into dimethylsulfone, or DMSO2. This compound is known to crystallize at cool temperatures, matching the 64-degree environment of the emergency room. The final, highly theoretical catalyst was the medical defibrillator. Livermore scientists proposed that the electric shock forced the DMSO2 to undergo a rapid conversion into dimethyl sulfate, or DMSO4. If this theory holds, the medical staff's routine, life-saving interventions inadvertently synthesized a lethal, vaporizing chemical warfare agent directly inside their patients' veins. This hypothesis faced fierce pushback from the broader scientific community. Organic chemists argued that the human body simply cannot facilitate the thermal conditions required to convert DMSO2 into the highly toxic DMSO4. Amidst the scientific divide, the state health department issued a controversial official ruling. They concluded that the event was an episode of mass sociogenic illness, essentially mass hysteria, triggered by the high stress of the ER and a foul smell. In the absence of a definitive consensus, illicit cover-up theories began to sprout. One hypothesis even suggested that hospital employees were using the facility's HVAC system as a methamphetamine lab, causing the toxic fumes. Without a reproducible scientific answer, institutional defensive posturing and wild public speculation stepped in to hijack the narrative. But the mass hysteria theory fails to account for the physical toll on the medical staff. Dr. Gorczynski spent 2 weeks in the intensive care unit, developing hepatitis and avascular necrosis in her knees, severe, undeniable injuries that panic alone cannot cause. For Gloria Ramirez, the endpoint was delayed and tragic. She was finally buried in a grave 10 weeks after her death, as her family vehemently protested the hospital's care and rejected the official findings. Decades later, the event remains suspended in a space between impossible chemistry, psychological contagion, and institutional denial. The case of the toxic lady remains a medical enigma, a reminder that an alignment of rare variables can produce a lethal, unidentified anomaly.